Hey, good morning. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It's springtime. This is a great time traditionally to buy a vehicle. But in April, we may get hit with some serious tariffs in the auto industry. We are battening down the hatches for that. But in the interim, we have 1 day left in March. It is going to be a bonanza on Monday. If you are a part of this culture that is the Leafs Convo and you had any designs on doing anything car related this spring, why not do it on Monday before the tariffs hit? Residuals are higher and the discounts are everywhere at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. When you support what we do through the car buying and business endeavor, you obviously support us with the Leafs Convo too. It is Sunday, March 30th, 2025. I am in London. Mr. Augello is in Buffalo, New York. Not many teams go into Los Angeles and beat the Kings. The Leafs just did that. On the flip side, not many teams lose to the San Jose Sharks. The Leafs also did that twice. Good morning, Mr. Augello.
Good morning, Norm. I tweeted last night after the victory. I said, there is no more maddening team than the Toronto Maple Leafs, because not only did they lose 6-5 in a shootout to San Jose, they've lost to them twice in the last month in shootouts. So that's 2 points that you've lost out on top of losing to Nashville, which we talked about, which they lost last Saturday. That's 4 points. That could be the difference between winning and losing the Atlantic Division. And as we argued on the previous show, I think that's meaningful. I think they have to win the Atlantic Division. I think they need Florida and Tampa Bay, two juggernauts in the Atlantic Division, to beat the crap out of each other for them to have any chance of getting past the first round, past the second round, into the conference final, and then who knows what happens. But I really think they absolutely need to win the Atlantic Division, and that's why the lost points that they've already had, and they have 2 games in the remaining against Anaheim on Sunday, and then in later next month against Buffalo, that are absolute must victories. Otherwise, you almost make, not to say they're meaningless, but you don't put yourself in a prime position to move past Florida and Tampa if you beat them head to head.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. 1 day left in March. Come see me at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. I'm going to help you out. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. Leafs Convo poll, Mike, on the back of our disagreement when it comes to whether it's essential for the Leafs to win the Atlantic. At this point, does the Leafs' first round opponent in the playoffs really matter? 76 votes, Mike. 53% say no. Norm is right. 47% said yes, they are with you, Mike.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would be, obviously, if you can call your shot or know that you're setting up an easier route and then deliver, for sure, win the division, let the juggernauts go at each other, take the easier opponent. But nothing's easy with the Maple Leafs.
Simply put, 53% are completely wrong.
Okay.
Absolutely completely wrong. Because you will have your head in your hands and crying in your beer when they lose to Florida or Tampa in the first round. I'm not saying that they can't beat them in the second round, but you need to have those teams weakened, and they will be weakened by a head-to-head matchup that will be along the lines of Dallas and Colorado. They will literally beat the crap out of each other. Now, that's not to say that the Leafs could not, we know they lost to Montreal a few years ago. So it's we know they lost to Columbus a few years ago. They're very capable of losing the teams that they should beat. And, what we talked about just recently about them losing regular season games to teams that they should beat, that's evidence of it. But I think they improve their chances of getting past the first round if they play Ottawa, who's a flawed team. They have talent, but they're flawed. Or Montreal. They have a better chance of beating those teams. Will they do it? Well, no. Who knows? But I think they have a better chance than if they go head-to-head against the Lightning or the Panthers.
What are your takeaways from that game with the Kings? 3-1, John Tavares, 2 more goals, Austin Matthews with the shorty, Anthony Stolarz looked great. Winning in that environment is extremely difficult. They pull it off. That was kind of like playoff hockey, Mike. You're not going to have knock them down, drag them out, 7-6 games. They're going to be tight. They're going to be tight checking, low scoring affairs, where, every single goal is monumental. What did you take away from that game? And, is that indicative of how the Leafs can play when they really want to?
What I take from it is, they played a playoff style game, which I think the lineup that they have now is more conducive to doing that. You saw, Brandon Carlo drop the gloves earlier in the game. He's a physical defenseman. You saw, I think their defensive pairings, at least the top 2 defensive pairings, were pretty good. We'll get to the bottom pairing in a second. And you say, well, it's bottom pairing. They don't play the big 11 or 12 minutes. You can lose a game in those 11 or 12 minutes.
Well, so Simon Benoit did his best to give the
well, and then
Ferrier the advantage yesterday.
Well, yeah, and then said that this is my issue. The Simone Benoit of 2024-25 is not the Simone Benoit of 2023-24. It's not the guy who signed an extension, who you thought, oh my God, they got that guy for $1.3 million or whatever the salary is. Okay, he's resorted back to the Simone Benoit that essentially got let go by the Anaheim Ducks. He has not played well. He's a big physical kid. Sometimes he trips over his own feet. I don't think, and this is the thing that really baffles me. You have a right shot defenseman in Philippe Myers, who's been around, but he played effectively. He's not a great defenseman, but I think you gain more from having Oliver Ekman-Larsson play on his strong side, on the left side, with Philippe Myers as the number 6, as opposed to having OEL playing on the right side on his offside and having Simone Benoit in there. Benoit, he's not a particularly good penalty killer. He's 5-on-5. He brings a physical aspect, and we know that Berube likes that. But so does Myers. And Myers has got a big shot from the point. So I don't know. Maybe this is a testing ground over the last, say, dozen games to see whether Benoit plays or Myers plays. Myers hasn't played in a while. I don't think there's an injury there. But I just think that right now, the little mistakes that are made with the bottom pairing, like I said, some people, well, you're just pulling out, you're just doing an Aki Berg or a Corey Cross, and yeah, well, exactly, Spike 11. He's a 7th defenseman, and fine, he's making less than $2 million. Now, I would have rather kept Connor Timmins and had him on the bottom pairing. And Wilford, I got into an argument yesterday from
I'm distracting you, Mike.
No, you're not, because we're on defense, and I wanted to address that. These people out there that are saying, I had one guy on Twitter who said, this is Morgan Rielly's last year in Toronto. I says, oh, you might want to tell his agent that, because he's got a no movement clause. Mm-hmm. And so, well, he'll waive it to go back to Vancouver. It's time for him to move on. You idiots. You're idiots out there. He is your best offensive defenseman. Is he having a good year? No. Nobody would say that he's having a good year. But I'm telling you right now, they will sink or swim in the playoffs. And some people think, well, they'll sink. But based on the way he plays. And yesterday, he was on the power play that got them the game-winning goal, which normally he's not on the power play. It was a 4-on-3, so they had a defenseman out there. Morgan Rielly's not having a good year. He's still a good defenseman. Does that mean he's going to play well in the playoffs? I don't know. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not Karnak the Magnificent. All I can tell you is that he's the best offensive defenseman on this team. You added players that you needed to add on the blue line, in Carlo, in Tanev, in McCabe. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, maybe in a pinch could step in as a point guy on the power play. But I'm telling you right now, in terms of a puck rusher, in terms of offensive capability and creativity, Morgan Rielly's the best defenseman that they have. And if you're saying they should trade him, you're an idiot.
Right. Just because you don't like a guy doesn't mean he's going anywhere. We've had a love and hate relationship with William Nylander over the years, more recently with Mitch Marner. Morgan Rielly's a whipping boy. Just because we don't like them during a period doesn't mean that the Leafs are going to ship them out. And it's typical of a fan base, and not just Leaf fans, but fans in general, when they have angst towards a particular player. They believe the player doesn't have the value he once did, and in the same breath is expecting another team to overvalue what we're devaluing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fandom, Mike, and we get frustrated. We get frustrated with the lack of, the lack of compete sometimes, or the lack of production in other circumstances. But Morgan Rielly isn't going anywhere. That's the thing.
I have no problem calling out players who don't produce,
right.
Players who don't play well.
And you do,
and I do,
and call them out.
And I've done it throughout my entire history, first as a fan and now as a reporter. Like I said, Aki Berg, Corey Cross, Anders Eriksson, Jyrki Lumme. You can keep going. Ron Hainsey. You can keep going. But I mean, when a player has given you a portfolio of productivity and quality, and he has a bad year, whether it be because of injury, or whether it be because, things going on in his life, you don't know. I don't know. I don't live with Morgan Rielly. All I know is Morgan Rielly has been a borderline all-star, right. Was in consideration for playing on Team Canada in the Olympics, and now all of a sudden you want to trade him because he's having a bad, he's not ancient.
Right.
So, he's younger than he's 31 years old, I believe. So I'm sorry. Now, a couple of years ago, he got injured. He struggled. And then that was the year that he played really well in the playoffs against Tampa Bay.
Right.
Very capable, very possibly he does that. And then he shuts up all the critics. If he plays as badly and as inconsistently as he has during the regular season, then there may be a conversation. But if he doesn't want to go anywhere, he's not going anywhere. He's got a no-move clause. Just like Mitch Marner.
I hate these no-move clauses. I don't care if it keeps Morgan Rielly in Toronto until he decides he wants to leave, or the Leafs can, let him just walk away. I hate these no-move clauses. We know that they're essential to wrapping up business these days. What can you do? A couple of comments. Michael Matthew, Morgan is having an off year, but I believe he will redeem himself with fans come the playoffs. That's an optimistic point of view. Spike 11, when Berube won in 2019, who was the Rielly equivalent on that team? I don't remember. Berube likes 2A defensemen, not offensive D-men. Rielly is no longer a fit with this team, but he is the best defenseman. Arguably the best defenseman the Leafs have had during this era. And Craig Berube has to field a lineup night in and night out.
Well,
he's got to find a way. He's got to find a way to apply Morgan Rielly the best way he can, and Morgan Rielly has to live up to that paycheck. And every shift, every game is another opportunity for him to kind of right the wrongs of this season. And if the Leafs benefit from that, then we'll all be happy.
Well, Berube likes bigger defensemen. There's no doubt about that. And that's what they've done in terms of going out and getting Tanev as a solid defensive defenseman, and the trade for Brandon Carlo. Don't make any mistakes. The trade for Brandon Carlo was to give Morgan Rielly a veteran, big, right shot defensive safety net. So he, and I think he has played better since they paired Carlo and him. So I just look at this as, and the equivalent, go back to 2019, the equivalent was Pietrangelo, and to a lesser extent, but he had a big year that year, and really, in my estimation, has not ever matched this Colton Parayko. And we've heard Colton Parayko's name mentioned in trade talk constantly, and sometimes in connection with the Leafs, and that's not going to happen anymore. But big right shot defenseman who stepped off offensively and, has had good offensive years, but he's been inconsistent. I'm not saying Morgan Rielly is Colton Parayko. Colton Parayko is a right shot defenseman. Rielly's a left shot defenseman. There are differences there. But, I'm saying right now, part of the Leafs' fortune or misfortune, depending on what happens in the playoffs, is going to be reliant on what Morgan Rielly does. Not that all the pressure, you're going to have McCabe and Tanev as shutdown pairs against the other team's big line. That's an advantage that this team has not had in years. So, but Morgan Rielly generating offense, jumping into the offensive rush, creating, making good passes will definitely be a factor in whether this team goes forward or not.
OG's Converts, like the content, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok. I cut up segments of our show, and we're doing pretty well over there. Not a lot of followers, but lots of views, lots of interaction. YouTube Shorts, we're also on Instagram. Whatever you can do to push our product out there, it means a lot to us. Wilfred Witzke, Carlo looked steady, a little goal with Jeff Malott last night. Mike, that was a good trade. That was a good trade. There's term, and he's going to be around. There's a bit of control. Brandon Carlo will play a full season most likely with the Maple Leafs in 25-26. But, Wilfred Witzke is correct. Carlo has looked steady, and he's given Morgan Rielly a little bit more room to breathe and operate out there, and that's fantastic. Do you think when it's all said and done, however long the Leafs playoff run goes, will it hinder on the ability of the defensive group to be cohesive and do what it has to do to succeed playing a playoff style hockey?
I think it'll be part of it. I think it's also going to come down to the goaltending. And as we saw, and I'm not shrinking from my opinion because I still believe that this team will not go deep with Anthony Stolarz in net. He did play a really good game last night, and Joseph Woll was part of the problem in San Jose. Now
we'll get to the goaltending, but the defensive group has to support whomever is between the pipes.
Sure. But even when a goaltender even when a defense limits the goaltending to 20 shots on goal, the goalie's got to make the save. So I think that, you don't have Igor Shesterkin back there. You don't have Sergei Bobrovsky. You've got question marks. I think the question marks are less on the blue line and more on the goaltending and more on the consistency of the offense than it is. It's always, the defense has always been an excuse with this team over the last few years. That excuse is over with, except for bottom pairing. Bottom pairing. Now you can tweak that. You can put Myers in there, and maybe that solves the problem. Maybe that plugs the hole. And move Larson to the left.
Wouldn't Berube want to do that now? There are 9 games to go.
I think he's going to play around with it. He's kept the same pairings, the same 6 for a good stretch. Now, if he doesn't think Myers is capable and this is the best 6 that he has, then he's going to stick with it. But I think they should at least give Myers a look. Maybe in the games that don't count as much, but every game now in the remaining 10 games, I think it is, they count. So, if he's going with them now, then maybe this is what he's going to stick with. I don't agree with it, but he's going to stick with who he wants to.
Hey, listen, all teams put up duds, right? All teams you expect to win lose games, and in frustrating fashion. It happens all the time. The Habs beat Florida. The Sens lose to the Sabres. Toronto falls twice to San Jose. San Jose has like 18 wins all season. They're not good. Watching last night and the way the Leafs played, how many faceoffs they won, how many hits they threw. Yeah, they were outshot, but that was a really solid game from two really good teams. The one team that we support and believe has so much more capability than it has shown so far. Yet you go back a couple of nights prior in San Jose, they have to claw back to just send the game into extras. And against a team that you would expect them to go in and absolutely trounce with so much emphasis on what's to come and so much, meaning to these games as the schedule comes to a conclusion. I'm having difficulty wrapping my head around how this team approaches individual games, Mike. It should be the same regardless of who you're playing against. The purpose is to win, collect points, and go barreling into the playoffs. So what the hell can we take away from what we've seen over the last 2 games? And what's it going to be like over the final 9?
It's not just the last 2 games, it's the last month or so. It's, it's since even before, it's after the Four Nations. They did lose 5 of 6. They have lost to Nashville and San Jose twice. Those can't be ignored. And the only thing you could say, well, it was goaltending, or it was this, or it was that. Okay, again, like their offense has been inconsistent at times. Like recently, the only consistent performer, is John Tavares. And John Tavares is gonna make it tough on the Leafs, because the Leafs wanted probably to have him take a lesser salary. He's got 35 goals. He's the highest scoring unrestricted free agent. So, he's probably going to expect more. And I think they're probably going to have to pay him, especially if they let Mitch Marner go, which we'll talk about that. I continue to believe that Mitch Marner's future in Toronto depends completely and utterly on them and what they do in the playoffs. If they lose in the first round, he is gone.
Do you give Marner, and I was going to ask this question later, but do you give Marner the same consideration? Do you white glove Marner the same way you white glove Rielly? I don't think you do. I don't think you, because Rielly, he's got things going on in his life. He's got the pedigree. He's not going anywhere. Give him a chance. Well, could you not say the same things about Mitch Marner? Well, why do we dislike? I mean, we dislike them both at times. And Rielly's been more of a whipping boy of late. I think we're just living with Mitch Marner. But, Marner is all of those things. Yeah. He's putting up a great year. He's got the pedigree. He's way over a point per game for his career. But he still leaves something to be desired that most of us believe he cannot fulfill while he's in Toronto. So what is it about him that you won't forgive, but you will with Rielly?
Mitch Marner will be saying, hold my beer after the playoffs, because you think the criticism of Rielly is heavy now. Watch if Mitch Marner doesn't show up in the postseason and tell me, because that, where the level of criticism has risen on Mitch Marner hasn't happened yet. We know he can score in the regular season. We know he's a great creative player. We know he's a good penalty killer and integral to their power play. It's the playoffs. It's all about the playoffs and whether he shows up or not. If he shows up, then he shuts up people. Right. But that's the whole thing. And if he shows up, then he's going to get paid. And if he doesn't show up, then he will be gone. I know whether it will be on his own volition, meaning I can't handle this and I'm going to leave Toronto, or the organization saying we're not going to pay you what Austin Matthews is being paid. You have to sing for your supper, Mitchie.
No player represents the team more than Mitch Marner, because like Mitch, the team has not exactly done very well in the playoffs and leaves a lot to be desired. And look, this era of the core four, could be coming to an end this summer. And how will it end? With no success? I mean, that's the big question that we're all waiting to have an answer to. I mean, from the very beginning of this season, Mike, it's the disappointment year after year when it comes to the playoffs has prevailed. And there have been lighter times, darker times, but we're 9 games away from the question being answered and potentially ultimately for the last time with the 4 guys all wearing the blue and white. Where's my buddy Francisco Pinto? The Portuguese superstar here that he's obviously talking about, because they are fellow countrymen. John Tavares, real quick on him, 35 goals, Mike. I think he hits 40. And you know what? If he plays his way out of Toronto's ability to pay him, good for him. At this stage of his career, putting up 40 goals, this resurgence. If the Leafs can't pay him because now he's worth more due to the fact he put up a 40-goal season at his age, then all the power to him, and go make your money, John. The Leafs will have to look elsewhere.
Well, I think that you have a sort of an insight in the tactics of Brad Treliving when it comes to the off season, because the news came out, I think it was earlier this week, that they weren't going to negotiate, or maybe negotiate, but they weren't going to sign the two unrestricted free agents in Tavares or Steven Lorenz. This is outside of Marner until after the season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember, in the summer, they can go 10% over the cap. They've got three situations, and I think it has something to do with Marner, but it also has to do with Matthew Nyes. They will need to get Matthew Nyes, because I double-checked. Matthew Nyes can be offer-sheeted, and Matthew Nyes is probably going to score 30 goals. And if the Leafs are right up against the cap, then they are vulnerable to a team signing Nyes to an offer sheet after July 1st. I think they will get Nyes signed before July 1st. Mm-hmm. He wants to stay in Toronto, and if they pay him, no problem. Tavares, Lorenz, they filter in underneath that. Lorenz is probably going to be $1 million player. He's a good fourth liner. Tavares, I think they would have liked to have gotten him on a deal for $4.5 or $5 million. It could be $6, could be $6.5.
Don't you think he's going to be sought after now that he's put up?
Yeah, but I think he wants to. I think he wants to stay in Toronto, Norm.
Do you think that is going to cause teams to refrain from reaching out to him? I mean, they're going to put feelers.
No, I don't think it's going to. Like, if he hits July 1st, I think he will get signed before July 1st. Right. They just won't sign him until after the end of the regular season. Marner is the random element here. It depends. Marner, it's been widely speculated Marner is going to ask for more than Matthews. And you want to make that, then get us to the conference final. Show up when it counts.
So if he's going to do that, Mike,
yeah.
Do you believe that his representation believes the Leafs will consider paying him more than Matthews?
I don't know. And the thing that is sort of questionable here is, does he really want to stay? I can't remember who it was. It was either Elliot Friedman or LeBron or CJ that came out and said he's tired of being the piñata of Toronto fans. And he's going to continue to be that if they lose in the first round and if he doesn't show up. If he shows up, they're going to say, hey, Mitch finally showed up.
Watch him show up. The Leafs go on a deep run and he leaves anyway. I mean, they'll free up a lot of money, but wouldn't that be a kick in the ass to the
Juan Soto of the NHL?
Right, Lisa Gritton. So you would keep an old guy over a guy in his prime. You guys are messed. I think she's referring to us wanting to pay John Tavares, but not wanting to pay Mitch Marner.
But Lisa, the fact, and I respect your opinion, but the factor here is one guy wants to stay and might be prepared to take less, and they're not talking about paying Tavares what they're paying Marner. Tavares, even if he scores 40 goals, he's not. At the most, he's going to make $7 million. He may not. I think he wants to stay. I think he's made it clear that he wants to stay. I think the Leafs can take advantage of the fact that he wants to stay and pay him a little bit less, but there's going to be respect for a guy who has carried this team and been consistent all year.
Right.
With Marner, we don't know. He says, "Oh, I want to play in Toronto," but he didn't say anything past this year. He wants to stay in Toronto. He didn't want to waive the no move clause. Mm-hmm. They maybe approached him in the summer. Okay, all those things happened.
Right.
Didn't waive. He wanted to stay. But come July 1st, if the Leafs are not the leading bidder, I think he's gone. I think I think if he could go someplace like Utah or LA or whatever, I think he'll go.
At what point monetarily will the Leafs tap out, Mike?
I don't think they'll pay him $1 over Matthews. I think their high water mark for him is 13.24999999. And $1 more than Matthews, I think they say see him Mitch. And I don't think they're looking forward to that. I would think that they would appeal to him that, like, okay, we need to keep this team together, and the way we keep this team together is to essentially pay Tavares and Nyes what Tavares was making on the current deal, which may be tough. Maybe you have to go a little bit over, but he's making 11. If you could pay Tavares 5.5 to 6 and pay Nyes 7.5 with the cap going up, you can accept that. But, Marner asking for 14, he might get that from another team on a 7-year deal, and he might make more money on that because the taxes being less in some place like Nashville or Utah or whatever. But it all depends. It's all going to depend on whether he wants to stay and whether the Leafs want to pay him based on what he's done in the playoffs.
I think Snake Plissken, I think Mitch Marner's an incredible hockey player.
Call me Snake.
Yeah.
Call me Plissken.
Kurt Russell, the man, the myth, the magic. Christmas Chronicles. He played the same guy in Christmas Chronicles that he did in Bone Tomahawk. He's just Kurt Russell.
Some actors, they just portray themselves, like Harrison Ford and Spencer Tracy, but who cares?
OG's converts, look up Bone Tomahawk if you like nasty horror movies that are well done. This one's for you, has one of the most gruesome scenes in cinematic history. Incredible. Lost my point. Leafs bow out in the second round. Marner was meh in the playoffs. We get to July 1st. He takes a team-friendly amount of money to stay. Are you still cool with that? Or regardless of how the contracts play out in the summer, Mike, if Mitch Marner blows a wheel in any way, shape, or form in the playoffs and it results in more failure for the Leafs, it's time to cut ties?
Nor, I think that's an unrealistic scenario. That's like saying if I lost 10 pounds, I'd be dating Jessica Chastain. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't think he's taking a team-friendly deal no matter what.
Well, team-friendly meaning less the same as Austin Matthews.
If he gets paid the same salary as Matthews, I think that's the furthest that the Leafs would
go.
Would
you be okay with it if he
It depends.
has another playoff like he's had in the past?
No, I wouldn't. It depends. He needs to prove that he can show up when it counts. He showed up for Team Canada at the Four Nations. Show up for the team that has paid you over $60 million the last 6 years.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the goaltending here because it was, the difference was stark. Now, the thing is, in the first period against San Jose, Joseph Woll kept them in that game. Right. And then the second period happened, and the brain cramp that happened on the Eklund goal where he tried to pass the puck instead of just covering it and putting it in his own net. They were lucky to earn a point in that game. Woll was at times good, but, there were the 2-on-1 goal that he gave up, that goal to Eklund. There were some problems in his game, and right now the Leafs can't afford to have problems. Now, Stolarz played pretty good. His one mistake was exacerbated by Benoit's giveaway and Benoit tripping over himself. But he allowed
a lot of that lately.
He allowed them the opportunity to win. I think if Joseph Woll and Wall's going to play the second of back-to-back against Anaheim, if they lose to Anaheim and Wall's at all responsible for the loss, then I think you can pretty much stick a fork in it. It's done. It's going to be Stolarz in game one of the playoffs. If they go with Stolarz, I just don't know whether he can stay healthy. And he's also shown some inconsistencies in his game. And then, I'm not making this stuff up. I've talked to people who covered him going back to Philadelphia, who covered him when he was in Anaheim, who covered him as a backup in Florida. Now, he was going to be a backup in Florida because they had Bobrovsky. He had opportunities in Philadelphia earlier in his career. He had opportunities in Anaheim when
what Michael Matthew just said. Either way, we have a good tandem.
Yeah, but
there's no goalie crisis here, Mike.
No, a tandem does not play in the playoffs. It's one goalie. Now, if you're gonna say we're gonna go with a rotation, then I still, like Boston said, oh, we're gonna go with Swayman and Ullmark because they were, Ullmark had won a Vezina. Swayman was coming into his own. That tandem, that sharing of duties ended after game 2 after Ullmark lost to the Leafs. So,
okay,
barring injury, teams don't go with tandems in the playoffs.
If Anthony Stolarz is the guy and the Leafs make it to 1, 2, 3 rounds, it's a good having him. It's a good problem to have. If it's Wall, it's a good problem to have. If you're having to off-spell one with the other or yank a goaltender in a playoff series, it's not like it hasn't happened before, but you're probably headed down the wrong road if that's the case. So
you need 2 goalies to get through a regular season. There is no doubt. And having a 1A, 1B scenario is fine. But there has to be an alpha. There has to be someone who's going to take charge and be the goalie in the playoffs.
Arrow 99, Mike is correct. There is a goalie issue with the Leafs. Is this an issue? We just don't know yet, Mike. Joseph Woll didn't look great against San Jose, so you have his detractors. It's like it's a competition right now. It really is. And Stolarz seems to have the public opinion on his side that he is the guy. But talk to me in a week.
Well, Joseph Woll, after that game against Colorado where he stood on his head, he made 38 saves. Everybody's like, well, hey. And
exactly.
Right. But that's the goaltending problem. You don't know who to start because you get one example of how good Woll can be, and then you get an example where he doesn't play exactly great. In the playoffs, you need goalies to steal games. And I don't know whether either one can steal games. I think Woll can, but the problem is that his ceiling may be higher, but his floor may be lower.
Right. Well, if Joseph Woll's not the guy, it's not doesn't mean he won't be the guy next year, or will it?
I keep saying, and it, I'm sort of saying this tongue in cheek. But if you look at the statistics of a certain veteran goaltender who won 2 Stanley Cups with the Marlies right now, they're obscene. His goals against is under 2. But they're not going to go to Matt Murray in the playoffs after going with Stolarz and Woll all season unless there's this catastrophic injury. But I look at that and I'm like, gee, he's playing really well. His save percentage, I think, is like in the 930s. I mean, but that's a symptom. That's a symptom of what the dilemma is right now with the Leafs and their goaltending. Everybody's saying, well, it's going to be Stolarz game 1, and you very well may be right. But that is a big question mark because the guy is in his early 30s and has never never started an NHL playoff game. He played in the Stanley Cup final last year for Florida. And it's whether he can handle the crucible of playoff heat and whether he's durable enough to get through it. Mm-hmm. Because we might see both goaltenders anyway because one of them could get hurt.
Right. Matt Murray doing what he's doing, total coincidence at this time. But, wouldn't that be a story though? Like out of nowhere, Matt Murray coming to the rescue. It's not as if he hasn't done great things in the playoffs before. Like you said, he's won multiple Stanley Cups, but it's not his time. His time has come and is nearly gone. It's time for the next generation of goaltender to take the mantle. The question we're wrestling with is which one of these cats is going to take the mantle and which one will be the game 1 starter? Will it be Stolarz or will it be Woll? Stolarz was great last night. The opportunity for Woll to go in and do something special is right before him against the Ducks. We should probably get this thing wrapped up, Mike.
Yeah, just 2 quick things. Matt Murray, 9-5-3 in 19 games, 1.70 goals against, and 934 save percentage. So that's the reason why I'm saying, don't the chances are 1 in 100, but I'm just saying he's played well down there. And he only played 2 games in the NHL this year, so it's unlikely. But if somebody goes down, it's a possibility. The other thing, just quickly, I think you've seen the model of what the Leafs will be operating under the next few years by all the college free agents that they're signing. Now, you can say, well, that never pans out other than Tyler Bozak. Bobby McMahon was a college free agent. And he's got 20 goals. He played at Colgate. They signed him to I think it was originally to an AHL deal, then an NHL deal, and now he's playing on the second line and scoring 20 goals. They signed 3 college free agents. One, Luke Himes out of Dartmouth, is, from what I was told by Russ Cohen, my buddy from Off the Post, who knows, these prospects very well, says he's a good player. And, they signed Quillen last year, and he's playing well for the Marlies. Now they've added Himes, they've added Prokop, and yesterday, Elliot Friedman reported they signed the leading goal scorer for Arizona State University, Kerwin. And that was to an AHL deal. So they're bringing, and they have to do this, Norm. They have to do this because they're not going to have draft picks. They don't have draft picks. So they're going to have to scour the college free agent. And the other kid was that the Boria Vallis, or Vallis or Barris, but big kid out of Prince George in the Western Hockey League, scored a ton of goals. I mean, they are filtering through and finding prospects to fill their roster in the AHL and hopefully develop them into NHL players. It's worked before, and it may work in the future.
An organization with the means and the abilities that the Maple Leafs have, tentacles should be everywhere. Anywhere you can find potential players to help this team, you should be there, Mike. And that's Europe, North America, collegiate hockey, junior hockey, you name it, especially the Maple Leafs. They have so much stinking money, and there's so much riding on every move they make. Because, listen, at the end of the day, the Stanley Cup drought continues. It's been a long damn time. And, when you think about it, when we think about it, and we try not to, it's really embarrassing. It really is. And this is why, every little thing we talk about when it comes to the team's moves and what's next, I mean, we are, I wouldn't say we're on pins and needles at this point. Talk to me in about a month. But let's be honest. There's so much riding. There's so much riding on the next game. There's so much riding on what's to come. There is, more than any other franchise in the NHL. These games mean that so much more because the drought that is elongated and that has been protracted, it lingers and it looms large over everything that the team does and how we digest the results. What do you have going on outside of the Leafs Convo, Mike?
A lot of podcast work. Definitely going to be talking about the Leafs on Off the Post and on the wraparound for the hockey news, and more news to come probably late this month on the new website, Hockey Hot Stove. So,
any idea when that's going to launch?
It's in works right now. We'll have a dead certain date when I know.
Just real quick before we go, Ducks tonight. Then it's Florida on the 2nd of April. Another home game on next Saturday. That's against Columbus. Then it's back-to-back with the Panthers and the Lightning, the Habs, the Hurricanes, the Sabres, and the Red Wings.
It's unfortunate that they're facing the Panthers coming off a road trip. Coming back from the West Coast. That's an excuse waiting to happen. Teams always struggle coming back from west to east and long road trips. So we'll see.
Yeah, no more excuses, and that's another thing. Where this team is at and everything that it has accomplished, but what it's lacking in accomplishment. No more excuses. Forget about it. Mike, I appreciate your time today. OG's Converse, like the content, subscribe to the channel, follow us on the socials. We're doing our thing. If you are looking for a vehicle, I'm your guy at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. It's going to be a big day on Monday, the end of March, and then maybe the end of really good pricing and interest rates for a little while, dependent on what happens with the tariff threat. We're all supposed to get hit pretty hard in the auto industry in early April. Let's hope that's not the case, but just in case, I am your guy. You want to have that conversation at Norman Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. I'll get right back at you. For Mr. Augello, I'm Norm James. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. Enjoy the Leafs Ducks tonight. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario is out.